has been the project initiator and leader of this project. Her connection actually goes back quite far with this garden, right back to the 1990s when she was working in the Department of Tourism in Dublin. She worked with the former ambassador to Japan, the late Sean Ronan, and she recalls that he spoke about the importance of Lafcadio Hearn in Japan and how Ireland failed to understand this and had failed to do anything about it. Agnes was then involved with the Great Gardens of Ireland, and this particular garden was part of that. And then in September, as Professor Bon Kozumi said, in 2012, she was part of that tour when Bon and Shoko came to visit. And she was invited by the mayor, and they came down here to these gardens. And during that day, the seed was sown for the idea of this commemorative garden. So there is a sense of fate about this, that Agnes would eventually come full circle to connect Lafcadio Hearn to her two passions, that of gardening and this particular garden and Tramore. So ladies and gentlemen, could you please give a very, very warm welcome to Agnes Aylward.
Good afternoon, everybody. I just want to say a few things. Firstly, one word about the garden. People are describing our garden as a Japanese garden, but we're not actually ourselves, and Martin and all of those who made the garden, we're saying it's a garden in the Japanese spirit. It's a garden to capture the spirit of Lafcadio Hearn, which is something that Shoko Kozumi said to us yesterday evening when she visited. This garden has the spirit of Hearn. We don't dare say it's a Japanese garden because we know the huge history of wonderful Japanese gardens that people visit that are 100 years old, and ours is brand new. It's an infant. Some of the plants are only 6 weeks in the ground. So we have to give it some time. We have to give it some years. We have to wait for the expert pruning that Martin and Kazuki and other people will bring to it, and the shaping of it. And then, like Hearn, who, when he went to Japan, loved Japan, but he wasn't yet Japanese, our garden will become more Japanese as the years go by. The second thing I want to say is I want to mention all the people who made the garden. A lot of people have been kind enough to say thanks to me. Well, I had an idea, but an idea is nothing if it isn't executed. And many, many people worked to make this garden happen. Apart from all my own committee on the Lafcadio Hearn Gardens project, whom Anne, I know, will acknowledge, I want to talk particularly about the people who made the garden. The garden was made by 9 men and 1 woman from the CE scheme, the Community Employment Scheme in Tramore, together with Martin Curran, the designer and garden maker, and Michael Keane, who is the site supervisor. They all did fantastic work. I can't sufficiently praise the CE scheme. I want to thank the Department of Social Protection and the 3 representatives from the Waterford office who helped us, Michael Ormond and Margaret Clear and Liam Daly, and had faith in us when they granted the scheme to us and granted an extension of it for a few months to enable us to see it through. Now, as for the people who worked on the scheme, I think if there was to be a prize for the best CE scheme ever, it would be this one. And I think people, when I finish saying thanks to all the team, maybe you'll give them all a round of applause together. I saw people on our CE scheme. There are people who had horticultural degrees, and there are people who probably never did anything with plants before. But by the end of this time, they're all experts in garden making and in history and in Japanese folklore, and it's just wonderful to listen to people's enthusiasm and to watch them working so hard to make the place as spotless as it is today, which I hope you all had a chance to see. I also want to thank Garrett Wise, who is the manager of the Tramore scheme and has given fantastic support to us throughout and has endless patience and given us every help. Michael Keane, the site manager, I don't know where Michael is, he provided sterling support, he's down there, sterling support to Martin and to myself throughout. And last and first and involved at every level, Martin Hearn, who is sitting up there, the most patient person you've ever met, the most hard-working person you've ever met. Anybody involved with the project knows the contribution he made. Martin lives in Duleek. He came down here 3-4 days a week, drove from Duleek, was down here at 8 in the morning, worked all day. And you never saw Martin standing. He was running, he was working, he designed the garden, he decided where all the rocks would go, he moved them into place together with Willie Moore from Dunhill, who's probably here somewhere as well, with his machinery and with the help of the team. Martin selected the planting and planted the garden, except I have to mention Laura Casson, who planted the Victorian and the American gardens. So it's impossible to praise Martin enough, and he and all the team must be fully acknowledged for what they did. And there's one more person whom I spotted in the crowd, Finola Reid, over there, who actually is the person who, some of you will know her name, she's a well-known garden historian and plantswoman. And when I tried to find somebody to make this garden, I went to the embassy and I said, do you know anybody? And they looked and they didn't find somebody. And then Finola said, I met somebody who might be able to do it, and introduced me to Martin. And one day, about 2.5 years ago, Martin, I persuaded him to come down, and we met in the V Cafe, and we had a talk about it, and I was sizing Martin up, and no doubt he was sizing me up, and each seeing what we were getting into. But that was the beginning of it, and that was the making of the garden. So please now give a round of applause to Martin and all the people who made the garden. Now, I've dealt with the landscape aspects of the garden. Next, I want to mention Mike Roberts, the architect, and Mark Roberts, his son, who had slightly different roles in it. Mike and his wife Kaz, who is Japanese, helped us, both in their way, but Mike through his architectural prowess. Mike is a huge fan of Japanese architecture, and he designed the lovely Naiwamon, the Japanese entrance gate, which was made in New Ross by Kiltrad Joinery. And he also designed the Soribashi Bridge, which was mentioned earlier by the mayor, and which was made in Thomastown. And last night I heard Shoko Kozumi say, as she looked around, this was made in Ireland, because there isn't a bridge, Mike tells me, outside Japan like that one. So I want to extend our thanks and compliments to Mike on his great work. There are other people who volunteered in the garden, and I just mentioned first names, Vladimir and Chris and Simon, who are old students and they came along at different stages and worked for weeks, and 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 9 weeks here for us, and all developed a passion for it, and we hope that they have carried with them a huge love of horticulture, which will give them, as with our CE workers, a path to a successful future career for all of them. So that was the second thing I wanted to say, all the thanks, and I just have to find my notes. I want to thank our sponsors, because without finance, where would we be? And the council has been acknowledged by Anne already, and I will doubly acknowledge that, and I see Michael Walsh over there. Waterford County Council has been a huge supporter. The Department of Social Protection through the CE scheme has been a huge supporter. In fact, the only state funding we've had for this project has come through the CE scheme, and in that I would like to acknowledge Deputy Ciara Conway, who helped us secure that. And I do hope that other state departments will follow for the next phase of the programme and come in with some capital funding to help us to build our tea house and our azumaya and the other structures that we need to complete this. So, with that funding and through corporate sponsors such as Dawn International, who are represented here today, and SMBC Aviation Capital, who are represented here today, and Bosch and Lom, who I believe are represented today, yes, and through the voluntary, and through Tramore Tidy Towns Association, and through Michiko Masuda, who is a private citizen in Japan, who was so taken by this project that she has sponsored the Japanese gardener Kazuki Kazumi to come here, and she has sponsored him on 2 occasions to come. And Kazuki is the gentleman sitting over there beside Martin. And just to tell you